So, disclaimer. Devil May Cry 5 is one of the most fun experiences that I had in recent years, and is one of the best action games out there right now. I do believe that this is gonna be quickly labeled as one of those must-have PlayStation 4 games, so if you haven't played it, I strongly recommend that you do so, because it's very beginner-friendly, in the sense that you don't really need to play every other game in the franchise to understand this one. This one has you covered. There, you just heard the basic summary of what I think about the game, but this is not gonna be a review. If you're looking for like a well-researched, thought-out pros and cons about the game, there's countless of other videos out there that do a good job at it. Now, this video is gonna be directed more towards fanboys. And what do I mean by fanboys? I'm not using the word in a negative way, I'm not attacking anyone. I consider myself a fanboy since I've been playing this franchise ever since I was 11 or 12. Ever since I got my PlayStation 2, basically. So I'm trying to get you to understand where I'm coming from. Because when you're a fanboy, you either love the ever-living shit out of the franchise and you think it can do no wrong, and you support it all the way. All of its spin-offs, all of its games, all of its manga and whatever. You support it, you're there, you're the first in line. Or you do what I'm about to do, which is criticize, nitpick, because you care. You try to be objective, even though technically you can't, because I'm a fanboy, I've been playing since I was young. I cannot be objective, but I try to, I really try. Anyway, I'm gonna probably start ranting from this point on, so try to keep up. I'm not gonna discuss things that you already heard about and has been discussed to death, like the Red Hour fiasco, which doesn't matter. You already have your opinion on that. I'm not gonna discuss, well, the DLC. I'll probably discuss it at the end of the video just because some recent news came out. But mainly I'm gonna try to get you to know my gripes and concerns with the game that I think you haven't heard about or hasn't been discussed that much. I'm also not gonna discuss inertia or reversals because you probably already have your opinion on that. I mean, it's a nice option to have, and the only thing that I'm gonna say about that is that I just don't believe the bullshit reason that the developers gave, in which they said that when they were playtesting the game, a lot of testers were activating that mechanic by accident. I just don't buy it. I don't think that's even. I mean, it could be possible, but the chances of that happening are really slim. I just don't see it. But no, my main problem with the game is the story. Now, I'm not saying that the story is shit. It actually has a lot of fan service, but I mean, it satisfies the fanboy in me, but at the same time it doesn't. Like, it's not good, it's not bad, it's just okay. It does its job. That's why I said that the game is not is very beginner friendly. If you're new to the franchise, you're gonna understand it just fine. It has a lot of references, but they're not really in your face kind of references, in which you're like confused as to who this character is or why what are they talking about. So it's good in that sense, but that's why I said also that I cannot be objective, because I love the game and I love the franchise, so I just wanted to see more. I see the possibilities of how more it could have been developed and how much you can just explore deeper into the past and present of the characters. So the problem with me is probably Itsuno, because I think he has very conflicting visions, and I see it through his work. Because if you look a lot of, if you see his resume, a lot of his games are basically fighting games. They are very mechanically heavy. The two most known games that he's known for is Dragon's Dogma and Devil May Cry. And the things that those games have in common is that the gameplay is very good. It's top notch, even for its time. I mean, Dragon's Dogma still holds up to this day, despite the fast travel problem, but or the lack of horses for some reason. But it is a very good game. But the things that they have in common also is that the story is not very well presented. I mean, Devil May Cry has a lot of character development, character growth, and It does, especially Devil May Cry 3. It has a lot of subplots that are very well written. But if you digest a lot of Japanese media, it's nothing that you haven't seen before. You probably seen this kind of plot in other kinds of media, most likely anime. But but you love the character, so it does its job. It works well. And Dragon's Dogma was worse in my opinion because the only way that I understood that story was because I was engaging with the community and discussing it with fans at the time, and there was a lot of fans were just having like they had a lot of theories floating around until they collectively formed their own headcanon and came to the conclusion that yeah, this is what makes sense. Because still to this day, a lot of people are kind of confused if the cycle was broken or not, but whatever, that's a topic for another video. But anyway, back to the May Cry. And when I said that I have a problem with Itsuno, it's probably because, well, I don't see him engage with the writer, which Morihashi is the writer again. I don't see him engage with him as much as with other stuff. I mean, you see him when he was marketing the game. He will barely talk about the story. The only thing story-wise that he will mention is like, oh, well, this game takes a set amount of years after Devil May Cry 4, and that's it. Let me talk about this cool jacket. We're scanning real people. We're scanning clothes. Uncanny valley of animation. The breaker system. That was pretty much it. Which I'm not a marketing genius. That's probably what they should have focused on. But when I see, like for example, the marketing for Resident Evil 2, when they were focusing on, yeah, the engine is really cool, but also let's talk about how this story is gonna be different from what you already seen, because this is a reimagining kind of stuff. I just see like there could be space for both of them, like hype the story a lot and hype the gameplay a lot. And like I said, the story of Devil May Cry 5, it works, it's nice, but I do feel that there's a lot of like hanging plot points that haven't been resolved, or like stuff that just was kind of left floating there and was never addressed. And Morihashi is basically the fanboy of the franchise. He's the one doing God's work. Basically, he's like, okay, you're not gonna give me enough production to, or just you're not gonna do as much action scenes in the game or like narrative movies on it to explain certain stuff. I'm gonna release a novel, and I'm gonna write well, novel, manga, whatever you want to call it. I'm gonna release it to explain the gap between Devil May Cry 4 and 5. Now recently they're gonna release a manga for the player character B, which I'm guessing is not gonna be that much important. It's just gonna cover the month between Dante's defeat at the beginning of the game and the first mission with Nero. Which, like I said, I don't consider it that important unless they release some kind of plot point very important to the character or to the future of Virgil, which I'm gonna find out about it anyway. But that kind of stuff is only released in Japan, so if you're a fanboy over here in the West, you're just fucked. It's like you have to wait for a translation, you have to import it, and or if you know Japanese, you're covered. Doesn't really matter, but it's that kind of stuff that I don't like. It's like, I'm not saying that Devil May Cry should be like Metal Gear, like in which there's a lot of cutscenes, but there could be a balance. I mean, just look at Persona. Persona 5 is praised a lot because of its mechanics and because of its story. They're saying like, oh, it's one of those games that are classic RPGs, and a lot of people love it for it. Even though I think Persona 5 has a lot of cutscenes. It has like 90 hours of gameplay. 45 of those hours are going to be cutscenes, or just engaging with characters mechanically, like going on dates and stuff like that. Which I'm not saying is boring, it's engaging, but you could have 50-50. It's not gonna be tiring to the game, to the gamer, if you just put a lot of cutscenes and develop the game a little bit more. And I do feel like that is the conflicting thing that Itsuno has with Morihashi. When you look at Morihashi's past history with the development of all the games, they always make it look like he has problems with either other writers or just the development as a whole. With Devil May Cry 4, he was complaining like, well, we didn't have enough production money, so I'm releasing those two novels because a lot of those cutscenes were supposed to be in the game. like the fact that Virgil was Nero's father. It was explained a little bit more better and clearly in the novels, and but it was cut out from the game because production reasons. And I'm not sure, like, okay, maybe they didn't have enough money, but in here, that's what bothers me with Itsuno, because when they were asking, like, are you planning to release DLC? He gave out a lot of answers. One of them was like, well, if there's enough demand for it, I'll just release it. If you make enough noise, basically. And the other answer was, no, this game is a complete package. I'm completely satisfied with it. I actually work in this game way more than I did with Devil May Cry 4. I was given enough, like basically I was given ample time to work on it, so I'm satisfied with Devil May Cry 5. And I was like, when I heard that, I was like, okay, cool. So he's not leaving any stones unturned. He's giving his 100% on the game. He's gonna give a satisfactory ending to it and just explain everything. But that wasn't the case. A lot of it again comes from headcanon. If you're a fanboy, like I said, you love the game. Casual gamers love the game. But you're a fanboy, you're gonna engage with the community. You're gonna start discussing theories as to this and that. It's good. I believe a game is good when you start discussing theories about the future of the game, or like if you are interpreting the ending in other ways. When you start discussing the game with other fans and try to fill holes in the story, that's when I think it could have been way better. It doesn't automatically make it worse, but the game could have been better. Like, it doesn't necessarily have to have all of these gaps in the story, or at least mention them somehow. Like, for example, the Morrison report. That was one of the things that bother me about the game, because the first one is mandatory. They give it to you, and Nico gives it to you, and you read it. The other ones, they don't give it to you anymore. They're just like, even though it's kind of an important piece of story regarding Dante, is not given to you. And I'm not gonna mention any of the what report says, because again, spoilers. But whatever. But they don't give it to you. What I will do is just every time I accomplish a mission, I will just go back to the main menu, check if a report was unlocked, read it, and then come back to the main story, which is, it doesn't feel right with me. You know what I'm saying? It's like, it's conflicting. Like, do you care about the story or do you not? Like, the story, like I said, it has a lot of fan service, which is not necessarily good, but it works. Like I said, it's not in your face. It doesn't interfere with the story in any way. But the game has a lot of that kind of stuff, like all of the Nico reports too. I do feel like that's the same way. It's like, it's there for the fanboys, but at the same time it's for beginners, because it's there for the fanboys because it develops shit that the fanboys care about, like explanation for the weapons, explanation for characters, history about what they were doing, briefly. But it's also coming from a character that is a newbie to everything. So it's like Titus from Final Fantasy X, like it's new to the world. So even though it's explaining all of the weapons, objects, characters, and environments, it's explaining them in a way in which she doesn't understand, and it's her first exposure to that kind of world, in a sense. So it is conflicting, and like I said, all of this is like hidden in the main menu. It's like way like in the extras, and I don't think like a lot of casual gamers are gonna like even bother reading that. So that's why I say it's probably just targeted towards fanboys, and that's where I believe Morihashi just had a lot of creative influence in that, probably. But again, I do think the story could have been presented way better, and mainly because this is more like a personal complaint. I haven't heard a lot of people think the same way I do, in the sense that I don't like to consume external media to understand the story of a video game. It happened with Final Fantasy 15. It's happening with Overwatch. It's happening with this game. I just don't. I really dislike that, unless it's a valid reason. Like if the developers come out and say like, well, we didn't have enough money, we didn't have enough time, so we wanted to do this. It happened also with Metal Gear, with the audio dramas that they release only in Japan. Uh, I was like, well, I can cut you some slack if that's the reason, right? But with Devil May Cry 5, I don't get that sense at all. I don't think it was a money problem or a time problem, because they've been developing the game for quite a while, almost 6 years or 5. I'm not sure. Um, so I do think that Morihashi is the one that he's the fanboy. He cares about that stuff because he's been working since Devil May Cry 2, and that's when I think that they're not in sync, Itsuno and him. Because if you remember back in the marketing process, when they were like in interviews and all of that, someone asked like, well, just to be clear, Devil May Cry 2 still takes place at the end of the timeline, right? Because fanboys care about that kind of shit. And they were like, yeah, that still holds up, not a problem. And it was not even addressed in an interview, it was on Twitter. It was like an informal response, technically. And then a few weeks pass, and Morihashi is like, well, I'm gonna release a novel, and Devil May Cry 2 has a special place in my heart since that's when I started. So I'm gonna reference that, and I'm gonna use that story to develop Devil May Cry 5. And Itsuno and Matt were like, okay, we're gonna announce the novel. It's gonna take a few weeks before Devil May Cry 5, and oops, Devil May Cry 2 now takes place before 5. So there you go. Some fanboys were pissed, and I had a little bit of backlash, but it honestly, to me, it didn't matter, because I was like, okay, as long as it makes sense, it's gonna be all right. And I actually liked the novel, but that's why I really dislike, like I said, external media. This is that, for example, I got to read a translation. It was never official. It never came to the West. I'm not sure if it's gonna come to the West. And it doesn't seem like it was a money problem or a time problem. It's just Morihashi trying to develop more the story, and maybe not being allowed by Itsuno or the team, like, yeah, we're not gonna need that, or it's gonna confuse players, or somehow, I don't know. It's just like they're not really in sync. And like I said, Morihashi always has, like, if you look at his like his past history, it always seems like he has conflicts working with the team. And I'm not sure, like, if it's the whole team or it's just Itsuno. I'm not sure. But that's, to me, the biggest problem with the game. Like, you have the writer who wants to, like, develop his characters, because he created Virgil, he created Nero, so he just wants to. He has, I believe, a more like a soft spot for them than he has for Dante, because, well, Dante is not of his own creation. He just came in and started writing for him after he was already developed. But Dante is pretty much the icon of the franchise, and fans always demand more of him. So that's a tough situation to be in. Like, you want to develop 3 characters, one of them is not really yours, and you have to develop them at the same time in just one game. It's a lot to ask for. But like I said, the game handled it very well, and that's why the novels came in. But it's basically a fanboy problem, what I have. Because I want to see more. I want to see more of the story. And when I look at the industry and see some games that are very well received because they have a lot of gameplay and a lot of story injected into them, like God of War, Hellblade, the Yakuza series, that kind of stuff, they may not be considered in the same genre as Devil May Cry, but you get what I mean. That's what I want for Itsuno and the team. I mean, they already have the gameplay formula perfected. Every time something comes from Itsuno, it's just like, you know that the gameplay is gonna be top notch. Can you say the same about the story, though? It's like, they need to really cut the writer some slack, or he needs to get some better writers. I don't know. But in the case of Devil May Cry, just cut the writer some slack. Don't leave him to fend off for himself, having to release novels in order to please the fans and expand upon the story. But, well, that's basically what I think it's the problem with this game, for a fanboy perspective. And that's why I think Itsuno seems to be the problem, which I may get a lot of shit for this, because Itsuno is God in the eyes of the fanboys right now, just because, well, thanks to him we got Devil May Cry 5. But I'm playing the devil's advocate here, so whatever. Anyway, this video has gone on for far too long. It's almost 20 minutes now. So I may have to leave the DLC discussion for later. The only new update that came out was that they just confirm again that they have nothing planned for the game. Which we were setting ourselves for disappointment. We were always assuming that they were going to support the game full time, but we cannot have a clear discussion on that unless we have sales numbers, which I don't think the Capcom report is going to come out until early June, probably. I'm not sure. I need to research that. And we need to sales numbers because, well, we need to be realistic. I mean, Monster Hunter is one of the most successful games that they have right now. It's sold over 10 million, I believe. And they're just now releasing an expansion, and I believe it's going to be released in November or maybe October. And that's almost like 1 year and a half after the game was released. So DLC is a difficult topic right now. I mean, Resident Evil 2 came almost at the same time as Devil May Cry 5, and it also had some free updates just like this game had, but they're not supporting it anymore. I mean, they haven't announced anything related to Mercenaries, an Ada campaign, nothing. And that game sold, I believe, more than Devil May Cry, so at this point you should be more excited about Dragon's Dogma 2. I mean, the only possibility that I can see that it could happen is that once Dragon's Dogma 2 is released, they're going to be jumping back and forth between Dragon's Dogma 2 and Devil May Cry. That's like what I think it could happen, but we'll see. They might surprise you at this year's E3, but again, don't set up yourself for disappointment. I really don't think anything is going to happen until much later into the year, and even then it's probably just going to be a bit of news. I also don't think a special edition or a Devil May Cry 6 is going to happen. I mean, this game doesn't warrant that. On maybe until next generation, but the way the industry is going, I don't think it's going to be early into the next generation. It's going to be probably a little bit later. Anyway, if you saw all the way through the end of this video, thank you for listening to my ramblings. And if you want to engage some discussion with me, I'll be on the lookout on the comment section. See you later.